Well, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments today in a case that could redefine what free speech means. The court will hear from a Colorado baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple in 2012. Justices have already ruled that the Constitution protects same-sex marriage nationwide. Thousands of protesters on both sides are gathered outside of the Supreme Court. Our Jan Crawford has the very latest.
This case is attracting a lot of attention, and it pits a right to free speech and free religion against a right to be free from discrimination. A devout Christian baker on the one hand, and a same-sex couple who just wanted a wedding cake.
Jack Phillips had been making wedding cakes for nearly 20 years when Dave Mullins, Charlie Craig, and his mother, Debbie Munn, walked into his Masterpiece Cake shop outside Denver.
He asked us who the cake was for, and when we said it was for us, he said he would not make a cake for a same-sex wedding.
Mullins and Craig were getting married in Massachusetts and were planning a celebration back home in Colorado.
We went in so happy and left broken.
I was embarrassed that my mom had to see me go through that. And, you know, I have to be honest, I started to break down and I cried.
I tried to respectfully apologize that I couldn't create this thing.
Phillips, who grew up drawing and painting, says his cakes are personal artistic expressions.
I serve everybody who comes in my shop. So in this case, I will gladly sell you anything in my shop. But this is just an event that I can't create a cake for.
But to Mullins and Craig, it was discrimination. They filed a complaint against Phillips and won.
What we went through was humiliating and painful and degrading, and we didn't want another loving couple to have to go through that.
But for Phillips, the ordeal was also painful.
Phone calls were coming, harassing, swearing at you, to where my wife was afraid to come into the shop at points. And just, there were tears, and it's just like, what's going on? What do we do?
Phillips stopped making wedding cakes so he wouldn't be forced to violate his beliefs.
And what if the Supreme Court rules against you?
If we have to close a business in order to stand for our faith, then that's what we'll do.
Now, Phillips's lawyer says the case could affect all kind of creative professionals and force them to create artworks that may conflict against their religious beliefs. But the couple says this is just a straight-up case of discrimination.
And joining me now from Washington is Ilya Shapiro. He's a senior fellow in constitutional studies at the Cato Institute. Ilya, you saw Jan's reporting when talking to both sides, making that passionate argument. The baker's arguing that free speech and free exercise of religion protects him against a requirement for businesses to serve customers illegally. Do you believe that their argument is legitimate?
Well, I filed a brief supporting the baker, I must say that at the outset, on the compelled speech argument. And indeed, never has the court required someone to speak in a given way, even where there's dignitary harms, even where there's offense, as in this case. And I was there at the argument and think that I really can't predict coming out of it any more than I could within. It's going to be 5-4 with Justice Kennedy in the middle. At the end of the day, I think there has to be this distinction maintained between serving a class of people and not creating a particular expressive image or message to celebrate an event that the person's conscience won't allow them to support.
So, Ilya, what precedent would this set if for businesses just nationwide if the court were to rule in favor of Phillips?
Well, obviously it depends how they write that opinion, but the U.S. government, the Solicitor General, proposed a test where there has to be some actual expression and it has to be tied to some sort of event that the person doesn't like. There was a case involving a St. Patrick's Day parade about 15 years ago in Boston, and the Supreme Court said that that parade organizer could exclude the LGBT group that wanted to march in it. And so similarly here, this is almost the reverse. Can you force the speaker to march in the parade? Really, I think the argument should be over whether this artisanal baking rises to the level of expressive activity. Where do you draw that line? If, say, photographers and writers and painters are okay, but limo drivers or caterers are not, where are these artisanal bakers or florists?
Fascinating case. We'll have to see exactly how the courts rule. Ilya Shapiro, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.